All right, thank you so much for joining, guys. Today is July 17, 2024. This meeting is for our LJ agents. And let's get started with our interest rates. So, we finally heard some positive news from the Fed. So, the interest rate should be going down. And let's see how did they react. So, according to Freddie Mac, the interest rates are 6.89 for your 30-year fixed conforming loans versus 6.17 for your 15. Okay. And for your mortgage news daily, this one has a little bit more up to date because it's on daily basis. And we finally saw that your 30-year conforming conventional loans below 7%. Month over month for, I would say, last 3 to 4 months, we did not see anything below 7%. So there's a reason for this, and we want to know what is the reason. Why did it go down to 6.84 as of yesterday? Okay. The main reason that happened was because of your inflation data. So this is the chart you guys can see here that in June the inflation finally came down to 3% even. So the government is trying to look for indication where the inflation is going down, and you guys can clearly see it that it went from 3.3 to 3% even. Okay, prior to this, you guys can see in May it was 3.3, before that was 3.4, before that was 3.5. So from March until now it is going in the right direction. Okay, so that is a positive news. So even Fed Chair Powell said it recently that we don't have to wait for 2% inflation to drop the rates. And this is the most positive thing we heard from Fed for many, many months. Right? They were not sure, they're not too sure when they're going to do this change or when they're going to start cutting rates. We're finally seeing the indication that they should be doing it pretty soon. Okay? So the inflation going down, the interest rates will come down, right? As simple as that. So this is a real example for one of the files that we're closing this week, affordability wise. So this person was making $148,000. It was husband and wife's income together. They had around $150,000 for their down payment. Their monthly debt were around $570. The interest rate that they were locked in at was at 6.99 without buying down the rate. The property taxes were around $11,000 and property insurance $1,200. Okay, their DTI, which is their debt to income ratio, that was at 46%. So they should be able to make this mortgage payment comfortably. Okay? And the maximum we told them they can find a house was for 760, and they went under contract for 750. Okay, so this is a real example. This is what your clients are going through. So if they have this income, this down payment, that's what they would qualify for. Okay, as we mentioned, the inflation is coming down. That's a really positive news for all the loan officers and all the realtors out there. Okay, so we want to emphasize that. We know the stats that, hey, inflation is coming down. It's going to be a positive thing for all of us. And Fed said we're not going to wait until 2% inflation. Why is that? Because you guys can see even coming down 0.3%, it can take a while. Going from 3.4 to 3.5, right? Or going from 3.5 to 3.3 took them 2 months. So they don't want to wait for this to go to 2%. So even if it's heading in the right direction, which is, you can clearly see it, Fed is going to be satisfied with that. Okay. So rates fall on cooling inflation data. This happened starting July 12th, and we are seeing that hopefully more and more this week that the rates should drop even further. Okay, we're expecting that. A couple of other headlines in the news was that current homeowners are optimistic. If they're optimistic, I want our realtors to be optimistic, right? Don't just rely on one or two clients and saying, hey, I'm not ready for the market. Okay, I'm going to put you on the side. Let me work with the client that's going to be ready and they're optimistic about the market today. Okay. There was another survey done by TD Bank. Nearly 2,000 homeowners were asked this question, and majority of them think that, hey, it's still attainable. You can still afford to buy a property, right? You can still, the concept of buying a home. 67% of the time, 67% people said that it is still attainable to buy a house, and 38% of them plan to buy a house next year. So this is what we say: keep it very professional with your clients, even if they're not ready today. You guys have the right tools to follow up with your clients through KV Core, right? Add them, even though if they're not responding to your text messages, they're still looking at the messages that you're sending them via email or text messages. Here's a new property. They might not be ready today, and they might be ready next year. And guess what? When that time comes, we want them to know that you are the one who are sending them properties on a regular basis. Okay? So this is how you're gonna vet them in the long run. Some of our agents like to say, hey, I don't want to work with this client anymore because they're not responding to me. They'll simply archive them. So do not delete anybody from your system. Just simply archive them. Whenever they do become active, after 2 months, 3 months, whenever that time is, KV Core will make them your client again and unarchive that. Okay? So just know that not everybody's ready today. They might be ready a little bit later, but you still have the tools to follow up with them. Okay. Another headlines according to Housing Wire was that mortgage rates move lower on cooling inflation. Simply what we just said that, right? What are the chances that next Fed meeting, which is happening on July 31st, that they will do a rate cut? We don't think it's going to happen. 93% of the chances that it will not happen this July. But there's 100% chance that the analysts have penciled in that there will be a rate cut in September. Okay, we all should know this, that hey, when there's going to be major cuts, even if they do 25 basis point rate cut, we will see a positive change in the mortgage interest rates. So don't expect it in the next meeting, which is happening on July 31st, but do expect it in September's meeting. How often do the Fed meet? Every 6 weeks. Okay. So what will happen when the rates finally come down? We're going to see a couple of things. We're going to see that, there was an article last week which we told you guys nearly 1 out of 4 sellers were cutting the home prices. We have seen it with our brokerage as well. Hey, let's put it on the higher end. Let's see what the market speaks, right? Or let me just test out the market. The market is going to speak the truth, right? If the client is comfortable with your price point, you're going to have a bidding war. If there's more demand, which will be because the interest rates are coming down, you're going to see less price cuts. Okay? Prices may go up. Even if they don't go up, we're perfectly fine with that. They don't have to go up. All I care about is that our agents serving the clients who are ready to go before there's a huge demand and there's more bidding war. So you have to educate your client that, hey, this might be a good time to put in the offers. Okay. Next, guys, every client of yours might be asking you this: hey, is this a seller or buyer's market? Does anybody want to take a guess? Do you think this is a seller or buyer's market as of today? Anybody? Buyer or seller's market?
I would say sellers.
Because of low inventory,
Yes, correct.
right?
Low inventory.
Correct, right? So overall, we have seen it. It is a seller's market when you look at it as a whole. But speak to your client and let them know that, hey, every market is different. When we say the word market, that means simply the area. Hey, Brooklyn might be different from Queens. Even in Queens, South Ocean Park might be different from Richmond Hill, right? In Long Island, maybe Hamptons might be different than Elmont, right? Every market, every area that you are looking to buy a house, it might be a different answer for that. So I did the research for you guys. So for example, in East Hamptons, I picked the one that's in the buyer's market right now. So this chart will show you, or this graph here, that East Hamptons are in slight buyer's advantage. Right? Why is that? Maybe there's too much inventory there. Maybe there's not a lot of demand. So what do we know about Hamptons? Hey, the houses are expensive there, right? So there's not like an average house is $500,000, $600,000. So you see the score of 27, which means that it is a slight buyer's advantage. Okay. How about how when you compare that to South Ocean Park? South Ocean Park is at 31, which is slight seller's advantage. So it's not a buyer's market for South Ocean Park. It is a seller's market, but it's right at the borderline, right? It's not like there's a very limited inventory. At the same time, it is not a fully buyer's market. How about Brooklyn? Brooklyn is a score of 42, and that is a slight seller's advantage. Again, a seller's market. How about Franklin Square? This has the highest rating that I saw from yesterday. It was at 52%. This is a strong seller's market because the inventory is really limited there, and any property that comes on the market goes under contract within 30 days. That is a strong seller's market because the seller is getting the price that he or she wants. Okay? If it's a buyer's market, that is not happening. So if your client is asking you, hey, how's the market? Tell them it really depends on the inventory, which is the supply, and the demand in the area that you want to be in. Okay? When you look at a whole, it's maybe, just county wise or state wise, it might be a different story. But what matters to you as a first time home buyer should be exactly which area you want to be in. Okay? So you want to do the research for your client. Hey, how's the market in that area? Okay. So why do people move? So some of us know some of these things, not everybody. So let's go through them. Why do people move? One is that if they want to change the neighborhood, right? Maybe the property is really beat down, it's a rundown property, maybe it's a safety issue, maybe it's the location itself. They don't want to be in this area, right? So they want to move from this neighborhood. Another could be is a family change. Maybe, there's a pregnancy, maybe there's a empty nesters, meaning that the parents are living there, the kids already moved out, right, living their life. Now the house is too big for them. So you as a realtor can help them sell this house and they can move into a smaller property, and already they have built some equity and they can reinvest that money elsewhere. Or maybe they want to downsize because there's a divorce going on in the family, right? So there could be a family change. That's the reason they're moving. And another one is your employment change. Maybe you got a new job. Maybe the commute was too long, or simply you're retiring from that job. So us as realtors, we should know that here there's few things that happen in a family that will make them help them move from one neighborhood to another. Okay. I see some of our agents, especially the listing agents, they have, yeah, Harji, that's a good question. It is a paid service, so which we paid for those. If you want to do the research, if it's a seller's market or not, we're using Housing Wire. But every meeting I'll be going through different areas for you guys. Okay. So some of you guys do want to do door knocking. It's not for everybody because you need to have guts. You need to be confident. You should be not scared of no's. If someone say, "Hey, why the hell you're knocking on my door," right, and you're scared of them, and you're not gonna be able to do this. But on the other hand, if you have the confidence to talk to your any client out there because you are a licensed realtor, you can actually help them. They have no idea about you. So you're simply knocking on the door. For many, many years, this was the way that the real estate agents were making a living, right? There was no social media. There was nothing else going on besides knocking on the door. So there are some agents of ours and other agencies I see that they go from block to block. Sometimes they go as teams, right? And they say, hey, let's try to get listings. Let's see if this seller wants to sell the house or not, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We are licensed. We should be able to talk to anyone. So number one is that you want to be yourself, right? You want your personality to shine. You want to have that confidence that you are a real estate agent and you are able to help the seller, right? You want to have a positive attitude. You want to make eye contact and speak with confidence with the sellers. Not everyone will be interested in your service, so you have to make sure that you're okay with no's. You probably hear 10 no's before you hear your first yes, right? Sometimes it's 20 no's and then it's your first yes. You don't know when that client is ready to go, but just don't be discouraged when you hear no's if they're not interested in your service. And that goes just not for the door knocking, but the phone calls or any follow-ups. Maybe it's not the right time for them. Maybe it's not the right day for them, right? So if nobody answers, if you do have door hangers, flyers, or even your business card, if nobody's there, just leave that in their mailbox or at the door. Okay? If you want to get listings, this is one way of doing it. It doesn't cost you any money, right? You don't have to pay anyone because you're the one who's doing it, but it takes a lot of guts, a lot of hard work, especially when the weather is the way it is. It gets into 90s and everything like that. Maybe you want to do in the evenings, right? Really depending on your schedule. The main thing is that the door knocking does work, but it really depends on you if you can do it or not. Some people think it's just way too old school and it doesn't work, but guess what? There are some agents who are doing door knocking and getting listings out of it. Okay. All right, guys. Next is your buyer's presentation, right? Every one of us should have this presentation, and it's getting updated. On daily basis. I send it to one of the agents, and the agent wants to do an update. Hey, add this page, add that page. We have no problem with that. As a whole, we're making this presentation better. So if you have any questions, concerns, or a even way of us improving it, let us know so we can add another slide to this. The point is that we don't want to make it too long. The point is to for your client to understand that you understand the whole concept of buying a property, right? Even if you're a brand new agent or if you a professional for the last 20 years, they should help you sell yourself to the clients, right? So you have your buyer's presentation with your name and your phone number and your headshot photo, and you want to tell your client, hey, you want to have this meeting in person because you want them to sign your documents. So you want to have this presentation in person, and the best place to do it is at our office. Okay, you can do it in the conference room. You can do it one of the desks here. It's perfectly fine. Maybe if you have never done it, you want to practice with me, it's perfectly fine as well. Let's do this so you can build some confidence and you can talk to your clients. So the first thing you want to tell them is that, hey, I want to talk to you who's going to be involved in this real estate transaction. We have your buyers and the sellers. We have the real estate agents. We have the loan officer, your home inspector, your attorney, your appraisal, title company, surveyor, and insurance agent. And you're going to tell them that, hey, I'm going to go give you a full breakdown of each of them and when do they come into the picture, and we help you close. And I'm going to go through the next 20 steps with you from budget all the way to moving in. Some agent maybe want to go through line by line with them. Some might say, hey, I'm going to go through all these steps with you from 1 to 20, and then you tell me if you have any questions or not, right? I'm going to start off with the budget, with your budget. I'm meeting you here in the office. I don't know if you have pre-approval letter or not. If you do, that's great. But let's determine what is your budget. What does your income look like? And what is your savings? And what is your debt? All three of them play a big factor. Do mention that, hey, maybe a client can be making $1 million, but if their debt is $900,000, that means they can't qualify for a bigger of a house as they would expect. So income is a factor, but debt is even a bigger factor. Okay, so what does your income looks like? What does your debt looks like? And what does your savings look like? Okay, for your savings, this is what you're going to use for your down payment. But Mr. Buyer, I want to tell you that, hey, when it comes to your down payment, you also need closing cost. I want to make sure that the savings that you have, does it cover your down payment and your closing cost? Okay? So that is going to be your budget. So what he's going to ask you, hey, how much should I have saved up? Minimum of 6%, maybe 3% for down payment, 3% for your closing cost. It might be more, but minimum 6%. Then it comes to your credit scores. What you're about to teach them, this is what the loan officers will be telling them. But if you give them this information beforehand, guess what? They're going to know that you are a professional, you know what's going on. So, one is the credit scores. Okay, Mr. Buyer, your wife's credit scores are three different numbers. We have 718, 725, and 739. Your middle score is going to be the one that counts. So if it's just going to be your wife on the mortgage and her credit scores are the following, the lender is going to use 725 because that's the middle credit score. And if you, as a husband coming into the picture and you're going to be on the mortgage and your credit scores are 622, 636, or 648, they're going to use your credit scores. Right? Why is that? Because they're going to use the worst case candidate. So you have the lower credit score, so that's what the lender is going to use to qualify. You can have up to 4 borrowers on this loan, but whoever has the lowest credit scores, that's what the lender will use. So this is really important to know, that you guys should know this as well. The minimum credit score required for FHA is 580, and for conventional is 620. You're giving them very valuable information right here. Okay, maybe their credit scores is more or less, but when you give them that, hey, these are the minimum requirements, they know you are a professional. Okay, now your pre-approval. I want to know, do you have pre-approval? Is it from one lender? I'm thinking of you, Mr. Buyer. What is best for you? I need you to go to at least 2 or 3 different lenders and get a pre-approval and see how much you qualify for. There will be different budgets, maybe ranges for a different loan officer. Maybe one loan officer might tell you that you qualify for 500,000. Another one might say 520, and maybe another one says 550. The reason behind this is your debt to income ratio and the loan programs. So there will be different loan programs that allow you to stretch your budget versus have it on the lower end. So shop around with at least 2 to 3 people. What would a loan officer need from you? Your tax returns for your last 2 years, your W-2s, and your pay stubs. If your loan officer at this stage is asking you to do a hard pull credit, don't do it with them. Go to another loan officer that will do a soft pull credit that will not hurt your credit scores. Okay? Most pre-approvals are valid for 60 to 90 days. Okay, you're giving them the whole information for a pre-approval, even though you're not a licensed a loan officer, but you're a licensed real estate agent. You should know your client when it comes to pre-approvals requirements. Okay, now you have a pre-approval. Now we're gonna find your property. So I want to work as a team with you, Mr. Buyer. I want, maybe your kids have, or yourself have, Zillow or Trulia or Redfin alert set up. I'm perfectly fine with that. We should be working as a team to find you a property. If you see something online, it might be 60 days old, it might be 200 days old on Zillow. Send me that. Let me check the status for you. I'm going to be sending you anything new that comes on the market every single day to make sure that we can get and see that property as soon as possible. Okay, so I just want to go through this. Now my service is not free anymore. Okay, MLS requires there's few changes that are coming in. How would you know the lender? So anytime, that's a good question, Harjeet. So if your client is not sure if they're going to do a hard pull or soft pull on your credit, the buyer is the one who's authorizing that credit pull. Even when we do a credit pull, we need an authorization from the buyer. Hey, are you allowing me to do a soft pull or hard pull? If they're not too sure, they should ask the loan officer. Okay. So, Mr. Buyer, I want to tell you there's big changes coming starting August 17, 2024. So, MLS, which is multiple listing service, requires written agreements from all the buyers before we start showing you property. I can't show you any properties after August 17 unless you have this agreement signed with me. Okay. And now the seller may only offer commission to the listing agent, and I'm your buyer's agent. I'm not getting paid from the seller side anymore. Okay, so I need to get paid from the buyer, and we're gonna negotiate that. Okay, so two major changes: written agreement before I start showing you, and we need to work on what the commission will look like. Okay. So I'm gonna just help you negotiate the price. I'm gonna help you negotiate the price with the repairs, right? If the property needs repairs, how does the appliances look? How old they are? If there's gonna be furniture that you like, do you want to keep any of it or not? And if you need any seller's concessions, right? So I have the market knowledge, I have the communication skills, Mr. Buyer. I'm a licensed realtor. I'm the one who's going to be negotiating for you. So when it comes to an offer, I'm going to be doing the research for you, right? I have tools to make sure that the value, the offer that we're putting in, we actually get appraised from that. The bank actually agrees with that. So we're going to make sure that we are not waiving your home inspection, and we are not waiving your bank appraisal contingency. Simply put that, hey, whatever price that we are putting in, your bank must agree to that. Okay. And now if your offer is accepted, we want to make sure that we do a home inspection. I am a real estate agent. I can see the property with you. You can see it with me as well, but we don't know what's going behind the walls. We really don't, right? So we need a licensed home inspector to come to the property and inspect the whole property and make sure there's no safety issues, there's no cracks in the foundation, that the property is not gonna fall after or come down after the closing, right? There's no plumbing or electric issues, right? I want to make sure that everything is in working order, and a home inspector is gonna do this for you, and he's gonna charge you between $350 to $550 for a single family. Okay. And once we have that inspection is good, your offer is accepted, now you need a real estate attorney. Number one is that if you already have a real estate attorney that you have worked with in your previous transaction or is referred to you by another family member, let's use them, right? Because you already have some sort of connection with them, and you might be comfortable working with them, because that real estate attorney is going to give you legal advice and have a right to represent you throughout the whole transaction. Okay, so your real estate attorney is going to examine the agreement. He's not going to write the agreement, the purchase agreement or the contract. The seller's party is. But once it comes to the buyer's attorney, he's going to examine it and make sure that everything is in your favor and there's nothing hidden in the contract. And if there's any dispute in the transaction, this is the same attorney is going to help you out and have everything in your best interest. Typically, an attorney should charge you between $1,200, on the higher end $2,000 for this transaction. Average we see is about $1,500, but this is the range that we see. If you don't have an attorney and you would need recommendation from us, that's perfectly fine. I can help you with that as well. And now we are under the contract, right? Your seller's attorney sends out the contract to the buyer's attorney. Buyer attorney reviewed the contract. You understand everything. You're going to sign the contract and you're going to put down your earnest deposit, right? This to show that you're serious about this transaction. And now that contract and that check that you give goes to the seller's attorney, and then the seller will sign the contract. Once the seller has signed the contract, we have a fully executed contract. Once we have that, now that will go to your loan officer, and your loan officer will start the application, and they will order a bank appraisal. And a bank appraisal, as we mentioned earlier, will answer questions like, hey, am I paying the right price? Am I under or overpaying for this property? Right? I can give you my comps. Hey, look at this property that was sold 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But guess what? The bank wants to have their own appraisal go in, a third party, and make sure they're comparing this property to a very similar properties that has been sold in the last 3 to 6 months. Okay? So that's the biggest authority you can get to make sure that you're satisfied with this price. If the bank appraisal comes lower, then we have a problem, right? That's why we have the bank appraisal contingency. Now we can go back to the sellers and renegotiate the price if necessary. Okay, and the bank appraisal is going to cost you between $500 to $800 depending on the lender. Okay. And how about the title report? Now your buyer's attorney, while your loan officer is working on your file and ordering the appraisal, your buyer's attorney is ordering a title report. This is going to make sure that they're going to check all the ownership history. Like, hey, who bought this house before this seller and who bought it before them? They go many, many years back, sometime up to 60 some years back. They make sure that the legal description, if we're buying a two-family, it is actually a two-family. Does it have any liens? Does it have any judgments? Does it have any legal proceedings? You're going to see that on the title report. Okay? The property tax information, what we see on MLS, your title report is going to verify that. Okay, so title report is very, very important. Any open permits or any violations will be on your title report. And title insurance will only come if you have a clear title. Right? You have no issues with the title, so the title company says, hey, we will insure this title now so nobody can come and knock on your door and say, this is my property. Okay? Lender wants their own title insurance, and there's a owner's title insurance as well, which you as a buyer would have to pay for. And typically it's around 1%. It is not on yearly basis. It's just one-time charge. So it's going to be for $500,000 property around $5,000. Okay, that is your title insurance. Now you should be working with your lender, right? Your mortgage loan officer, and verifying the condition. Clear those conditions as soon as possible. And this might be as little as, hey, why do we see this large deposit, right? They need to verify that. Maybe they need gift letters. Maybe they do need the appraisal report or the title report or the home insurance. Whatever conditions that your lender is giving you, faster you clear those conditions, faster you close the loan. Before the closing, you also need home insurance. Now we want to protect your house after the closing, right? We want to protect it from fire, lightning, windstorms, or hail, or any other covered events. So fire is the biggest one that we see. So you want to make sure your property doesn't burn down. God forbid if it does, you want to have insurance so your insurance company can cover that. So home insurance not only covers your property, but it also gives you a liability protection, which is going to be providing coverage if someone is injured on your property. Let's say it was snowing out and somebody slips, falls right in front of your property, and they decide to sue you for $100,000, $200,000. This liability will protect you. Maybe you having a house party and someone was going in the basement and somebody slips and falls on the stairs. Same exact thing. There's going to be a personal liability protection from your home insurance. Okay. Some might ask for flood insurance. That is only required and will be required if the property is in a flood zone. Okay. So just like how you did with the mortgage, you want to do the same thing for insurance. You want to shop around with at least 2 or 3 different brokerages to see who gives you the best rate. Okay. If you need any help with that, I can guide you as well. Okay. This is how you're talking to your client. Now, before the closing, I want you to do a survey. Some lenders will have this as optional, But in New York here, I highly recommend that every client of mine does a survey. It will confirm the lot size. It will give you a property map of the boundaries and the dimensions of the property itself. If I'm buying a 30 by 100 lot size, I want to make sure that it is 30 by 100. If it's an irregular lot size, I want to make sure that I know my boundary lines and I know what I own on this land. Okay, this avoids any disputes with the neighbors regarding, hey, where one property ends and another begins. Hey, this is my break. No, this is my break. How about let's get a survey done and make sure that there's no issues. These common issues definitely come through if there's a shared driveway or if it's a broken fence, right? Even if those are not the cases, it's a private driveway, you don't see any fence there, still do a survey to make sure you're satisfied with the lot that you're buying. And you want to do this towards end of the closing. Maybe when there's a week left before the loan officer say, hey, we're almost towards end of the closing now, clear to close, so let's do a survey. And it's going to cost you $500 to $700. Highly recommend that you do this. You save the survey, it's just a map, so this way you have it on your records. If there's any future disputes with anyone, hey, this is my survey done. If they have any issues, let them do their survey, let the neighbor do their survey, and then you guys can compare it. Okay? And now you want to finalize the contingencies. We say, hey, we want to make sure that everything is in order. If things were supposed to be removed from the property, we want to do that. Was that done? If it was any repairs needed to be done, it was promised, or was it on the writer? Have they been they completed or not? As a real estate agent, I'm going to be there on your side. I'm going to be verifying all these contingencies are finalized, and then we're going to go through a final walkthrough. Okay? So your loan officer will give you a call or email you or text you, hey, your file is clear to close. They might say CTC, which is clear to close. This is the most satisfying words you can hear from a loan officer. When we do hear that, then your closing will come in next few days. Okay? That means that the lender is satisfied with your documents and the attorney has verified they have clear title. There's no issues on the title. And now we're going to go to our final walkthrough. And now this is your final chance to review everything before the closing and make sure that you understand and you like the property, everything is in working order, right? After this final walkthrough, we are going to go to the closing, but you cannot call me 2 days later and say, hey, there's an issue with the bathroom or with the roof or in the basement where you are not aware of. If it took you 15 to 20 minutes to view the property initially when you saw the house, you should be spending maybe an hour when you're doing the final walkthrough. This is going to be your house. If there's any issues, I want to take photos of it. I want to send it to my attorney and say, hey, this issue is still there. It has not been fixed. You want to check the light switches, the faucets. You want to check everything is gone. You don't want, we just had a closing for one of our agents where in the basement, there was still so much stuff there and the closing was happening in the next few hours. And the seller promised and we had to simply wait before they cleared everything and then the buyer went to the closing. So you want to make sure that everything you're satisfied. This is the time to do it. Okay. Now we're at the closing day, guys. Couple of things. One, at the closing, there is a wire fraud happening in United States. So as a real estate agent, I want to tell you when the closing day comes, you want to review your closing disclosure with your loan officer. That's going to be done 3 days prior to the closing. So you understand all the costs that's going to be happening. Your buyer's attorney will provide you with the information for payable certified check amount. This is super important. If the spelling is wrong, we can't close that day. If the amounts don't add up, we cannot close that day. We have seen with our company, some closings has been delayed because of these errors. So we don't want that happening ever again, right? You want to bring a photo ID that's going to be valid, right? Don't bring in an expired ID. And when you're reviewing all the documents, make sure you understand them. This is the time you're at the closing table. And finally, you're going to move in. Number one thing that when you're doing this is changing the locks. Again, I'm telling you these scenarios so you can tell your clients these scenarios. Hey, You don't want a situation where the old seller, had the keys or extra pair of keys, and they're just coming in to pick up their stuff or be in the backyard or whatever the reason is. This is not their house anymore. You should be changing the locks right after the closing. And then you want to call the service companies like the water company for gas, electric, internet company, and do official change of address with the post office as well. Okay, so you went through step 1 to 20. They're a first time home buyer. They had no idea about credit scores or appraisal contingencies or home inspection or any of that. You went through this presentation with them and it took you about 30 minutes. After this 30 minutes, we want to make sure that you ask them, hey, do you have any questions or concerns regarding this process? I know I went through a lot with you, but this printout, this PDF that I have printed out, you're going to take this home with you. I want you to use this later. Even if you are not going to work with me, I want you to use this for your own knowledge. I know some of the agents do feel a little eerie about that, but I'm a type of person, I will give the information and let's see if they want to come back to me or not. But there are some people that will say, hey, I gave you that information and I want to I don't want to give you the information if you don't want to work with me. I don't want you to be one of those agents. Give the information even if they're not ready to sign with you. But if you have done your part, if you have reviewed everything in details as we just did, your client should be ready to sign the agreement and disclosures with you right there and then. And you should not say, hey, after you leave from here, I'm going to email you these documents to be e-signed. No, I have them right here. It's printed out. Here's a pen. Let's get them signed. This is the best time to do it, right? Because you went through the whole scenario with them. So how are you going to print those out? You should go create a transaction before the meeting. Prepare yourself. So you have these 3 documents ready to go in transaction desk. The first one is your exclusive right to represent agreement. Second is your agency disclosure. And the third is your anti-discrimination form. All 3 of these forms should be filled out at the same time, dated for the same date. So what is so important about your exclusive right to sell? There's 2 parts, as we mentioned. The first part, how long is this agreement for? Right? The top piece is say buyer, you put your buyer's name. You put your name versus salesperson. Obviously, you put their address. You put your salesperson, your full name here. And how long is this agreement? What is the agreement period? Right? So you want to be competitive. You want to keep it as short as possible. There are some experienced agents who are saying, I'll do it for 30 days. Some people say, I'll do it for 45 days. Everything is negotiable. So you should be negotiating, hey, I'll do a 30-day contract with you. Let me go all in because you are already serious buyer. Let me do it for 30 days. And maybe they have no issues with that. Or if you say, hey, let's do it for 1 year. And they say, oh my God, 1 year is way too long. Right? So keep it competitive, be in their shoes and see where they're comfortable at. Negotiate. Don't pre-fill this. You should be filling this out with your client. And the second part is the percentage, how much you're going to charge them. So some our agents, they send me a screenshot like this and they say, hey, where do I put the percentage? If we read it, we definitely understand it, right? It says to compensate a broker if client or any other person acting on client's behalf buys or exchange for obtains a option or leases a property, the compensation should be a dollar amount or should be a percentage. I highly recommend you use a percentage because you don't know what the contract price will be of the purchase price. So let's say it's 1%, 1.5%, 2%, whatever it is of the purchase price. It says or percentage of aggregated rental. You don't put anything in here. On the bottom piece here, it says client agrees to pay additional commission to the broker. You should just leave that blank. You just want to put this top here. This is the most important. What is the percentage that you're charging? Okay. So you want to make sure that, hey, you don't want to undersell yourself either. I don't want you to put, hey, I'm going to have a flat rate of this or on the lower end. On the same time, we don't want to be an outrageous number where it's really hard for them to swallow. So keep it very competitive, be in their shoes. If you're a new agent, most likely you're going to have it on the lower end. If you're an experienced agent, you're going to ask for the higher end because of your experience. But again, you're selling yourself, see what they agree on. And just remember, it's all negotiable. Okay. Then towards bottom of the page, this is the property. This is where we're telling, hey, what type of property that they're looking for. What is the, which area, which county that they're looking for. What is the price range? That's what we always say. Don't try to narrow it down too much because things do change. How many times it happened that, hey, I'm looking in South Ocean Park, $700,000 property, and then 2 months later, they already bought a property in Valley Stream, right? So we want to make sure that you understand, hey, which area they actually want to be in. What is their price range? Okay. And then you're going to have them sign where it says client and date it towards the right. And this is exclusive right to represent. You know what is the percentage and how long this agreement is for. Even if you keep it short, you can still renew it or extend your agreement as long as your client agrees to that. Okay. Next is your agency disclosure. You're like, hey, this is the agency disclosure required by New York State that you're giving me the authority to represent you. So you put your name on top. If it's transaction desk, it will already have it pre-filled. Our company name, check boxes, buyers and buyer's agent, client's name, and the client signs. I believe 90% of our agents have no problem filling this form out. But this form here, anti-discrimination form, should be completed at the same time as your agency disclosure. Okay, this form is really important, is required by New York State. So to fill this out is same exact way as we did the agency disclosure. It has your name, the company name, the client name, and the client signs. And you can see here on the bottom, it says real estate broker and real estate salesperson are required by New York State law to provide you with this disclosure. So which client will say no to this when it clearly tells you there that is required by New York State? And simply tells you that, hey, your client has not been discriminated in any way or form. Okay, so 3 things that we need right off the bat when you're about to start showing them. It's going to be definitely kicking in after August 17th, exactly a month from today. But why not get started beforehand and prepare ourselves? We need right to represent agreement, we need agency disclosure, and we need anti-discrimination form. And they should all be signed on the same date. Okay. So guys, questions, concerns about the presentation, buyer's presentation, anything that you want to add to that? Anything for the disclosures? One of our agents recommended that towards last of his presentation, he wants to add all the sold property that he has done, right? All the recent sold, maybe last 3 months, 6 months or so. He wants to showcase that. Perfectly fine, right? You want to make your presentation better. Any ideas like that, just send me a message and we will add another page and, make your presentation better. And the main thing is to practice, be prepared before. You don't want to rely on last minute. Hey, I have a client coming in at 12 today and it's 11:50 and let me see if I can get this done. No, spend at least half an hour beforehand. If you need to practice the presentation, we all should do that. I have done it so many times. That's why I'm very comfortable going from, slide to slide. And let's see how comfortable you are. You don't want to be like, I'm not too sure about this line or that. You don't want that. Right? If your client is pointing out any line from the slide, you should be an expert and explaining everything. Okay? Any questions, concerns, guys? Okay, so right to represent, agency disclosure, and your anti-discrimination. Okay. Next, guys, we have vetted out some agents that have been with us for quite some time but haven't done any closings. So I'm clearly just like being blunt with them, sending them messages. Hey, do you even want to keep your license active? Right? Anybody that's attending today, I'm pretty sure you have not received this, or maybe very few of you guys, but majority of you guys that are active, you have no issues. But we want to make sure that, hey, you are licensed. Can you actually make money out of this license? Right? The answer should be yes, I can. But will you? Right? You definitely can do it, even if you have a full time job, a part time job, right? It really doesn't matter. If you're trying to squeeze in and trying to make some money, you can definitely do it through a real estate. You don't need hundreds of deals. You don't need, 50 deals. You don't need 10 deals. Even if you have 5 deals in a year, you can make some extra money from your real estate license. It's all about quality, right? It's all about building relationship with your clients. So you need to ask yourself, hey, how many leads do I have? How many of them are serious? When I was being productive and being a producing agent, I always had top 5 people in my head all the time. Hey, I need to make sure that I'm showing these top 5 people every single week so we can be under contract. Once we have those were under contract, out of 5, maybe 2 or 3 of them went under contract, I need to add few more to my pipeline. And I'm going to follow up on regular basis through KV Core, keep sending them messages. Hey, here's a new property, here's a new property. And eventually they will tell me, hey, show me this property. And that's what we want to hear. If you need more leads from, you want to connect with your sphere, this is your people that you have on your database, right? From your phone, this could be your family, friends. You want to let them know that you're a real estate agent. If you need office leads, you tell us that you need office leads. Okay, if you are a producing agent and you're doing a paid leads through Zillow or Realtor.com, that's good for you. And let's keep at that. Okay, so your pipeline should be growing on a regular basis. If it's not, we need to work on that. Okay, guys. And we have other agencies, other brokerages are coming to our loan officers and saying, hey, I'm doing an open house. Are you willing to come with me? And I wanted the same thing from our realty team. If you have a listing, you are hosting an open house, please invite one of our loan officers to your next open house so they can be with you for 1 hour, 2 hours, depending on their schedule, right? So they can help basically your clients and make you more presentable at your open house. All right, guys, that will do it from my end. Any questions, concerns, anything that we can be better at?
Let me share something with you, Lucky.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, I put in an offer and I lose the offer because I refuse to waive the inspection.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about a seller's market.
So the listing agent told you?
Yeah, the listing agent told me they had somebody who gave me the same offer, but they're doing no inspection. They liked my offer. I had more money down, but they was asking me to waive the inspection. And I said no.
Good.
It's a first-time home buyer, and we have to, protect, safeguard our buyers. I can't do that. So
Perfect.
I stopped, and 3 hours after, I got a text from him saying, Mr. Ali, I'm sorry, but the seller has gone with another agent. So it's a seller's market.
Definitely seller's market, but I think I am very happy the way you handled it. It's exactly what I have done as well. Like, hey, even though our offer is not being accepted, we don't want to push it where there might be a structural damage, right? Or maybe a bigger issue that you might come back to me and say, hey, you rushed me into this. There might be another agent and might be pushing that client, hey, it's perfectly fine as a seller's market. Let's just go with the offer. But I think you did the right thing. The client will appreciate it. I'm pretty sure more inventory is coming. You're going to find him a better deal. It's going to be a win-win situation for him in the long run. Today it might hurt because his offer didn't get accepted, but I think you did the right thing.
Yeah, I spoke to him. I said, listen, I don't know if the house have electricity throughout the whole house. We don't know if the boiler is working, functional. I can't tell.
Yep.
And for you to waive this inspection, and 2 months, 3 months from now, we close, winter kicks in, you have a problem, you're going to come back.
Yep.
Said I do a bad job. So
Exactly.
I'm
Exactly.
telling you up front, this is not for us.
Yeah. No, guys, this is for this situation. We all should be learning. When you're in that situation, you should not be thinking about your interests. It should be what's your client's best interest, especially if he's a first-time home buyer. If the client was an investor and he was going to fix up the property, and he must have told Mr. Ali, hey, it's not a problem, I'm an investor, no problem, right? As long as the buyer agrees, because he's an investor, they know what they're doing, no problem with that if they're willing to move. If it's a first time home buyer, it is best for them to move on to a next better property that they can find where they can do a home inspection, right? But yes, yes, thank you so much for that, Mr. Ali. Anyone else?